The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I am Mark Friedlander of the Insurance Marketing and Communications Association Board of Directors and the Main Street America Group. And welcome to the April 2017 edition of IMCA's Leadership Webcast Series. Today's program is Beyond the Buzzwords of Social Media, Content Mojo, and Marketing Automation. Differentiate your brand and monetize your online efforts. Our presenter is Jim Flynn, President of Hult Marketing and a member of the IMCA Board of Directors. Jim will also be a featured presenter at the 2017 IMCA Annual Conference. Jim's firm, Hult Marketing, is a full-service integrated brand development agency focused on taking brands to the next level. Before we begin today's program, I want to remind our listening audience to please use the questions comments box on the right side of your WebEx window to submit any questions for Jim. He will respond to your questions later in the program. Also, please note all attendees will be in the mute mode throughout the entire broadcast. Without further ado, please welcome Jim Flynn.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your gracious introduction, Mark. We're going to hop right in here. Lots to cover today, and thank you for talking about the upcoming conference. The conference committee has done a wonderful job of putting together a number of speakers that are going to go on a lot deeper dive into many of these topics, including social media. I'm not going to go very deep on social media today. I'm barely going to touch on it because there's such a great deal of content that's going to be available at the conference. So to start off with, talking about the top challenges that you reported when you were taking your registration survey. So at the very top of it, not surprising, because we find this with clients all the time, optimizing, improving ROI is one of the #1 things. The wonderful thing about content marketing and all of the digital pieces that are associated with it is, for the first time ever, it gives us the opportunity to measure so many things, and when set up correctly, to be able to prove ROI at the end of the day. I'm not going to go through each one of these right now, but you're going to see as we go through the presentation today, we're going to talk about each one of them in a great deal of depth. Now, the first part about content marketing, and when I say the word content marketing, or I use the word inbound marketing or other digital things, I'm really talking about this whole collective and all of these different buzzwords that we hear about the industry today. And really what drives all of this is it really works because of the change in buyers' behavior. The whole marketing segmentation and the way that we reach consumers has obviously changed very, very differently. In the old method of marketing, we had the first moment of truth was really when we made either face-to-face contact or telephone contact or even email with a person as a representative of the firm. And what has happened in more recent years is the idea of the zero moment of truth. So this idea that gets in between the stimulus, let's use the stimulus as potentially an advertisement of some type. It could be any number of different stimuli that would be working, but the online world has gotten in the middle of all of that. That could be social media, it could be a mobile device, it could be a social network, but in any case, something has happened before this first moment of truth. So that zero moment of truth has really, really changed it. So much so that you can find a lot of different numbers on this, but most people believe that about 70% of business-to-business interactions take place before the decision-making takes place, before the decision-maker ever meets with a representative of the firm that they're actually talking about. This is a study from Deloitte that was done last year. And you can see on this that across different age demographics, I mean, all the way from 18 all the way up to 65 plus, of businesses, from small businesses all the way up to $200 million businesses, they are really somewhat likely or very likely, over 50% of them, are willing to purchase business insurance online. And that's a real change. Now we understand, depending upon the complexity of the type of business insurance, some of that is going to change slower than other segments of the industry. But nonetheless, I think we are all in for some changes in the upcoming years, and we can absolutely be sure of that. And if my slide would just advance now, I would be, there we go. So Google, how does it work? Well, I don't want to drone on and tell anybody how Google works, because most of us spend several times a day searching Google or one of the other search engines. And so when I say Google, I'm only saying that because it's about 80% of the US search volume, plus or minus 5% up and down at different times. But as you look at this, I did a search for a pretty pedestrian thing. How much does professional liability insurance cost for an engineer? Pretty long tail search. And the amazing thing with that obscure search term is the amount of information that has come up here. First off, at the top, we've got 3 paid ads across the top. We've got the answer box that came up that Google has provided us. And as we go down through that, we have several brokers, intermediaries, and carriers who are represented in the organic results. So for an obscure search like that, organic results are returning a number of people. And if you look at that, 3,390 searches a month for that terminology and similar terminologies. Now, if you're not using a keyword tool like this, Google has some free ones. There's a number of them out there. Really, really valuable. But if you think about this, we're talking about 40,000 searches a year for people looking for what does professional liability insurance cost for an engineer. Well, you can only imagine as you get a little bit broader on that type of search, there is an enormous amount of search volume available. So it's important to understand what people are searching for. And this graph shows very, very well how important it is to be optimized for those keywords. So if you're selling professional liability insurance to engineers and you look at the main search page, so there's the top 3 or 4 paid ads at the top, there's some paid ads at the bottom. Quite often there are the answer box somewhere in the center. There's generally 10 organic returns in there, and if it's a local search thing, there's that section of it. So the search page has continued to get more and more busy. But the important thing to remember is 70% of all clicks go to the first 4 people, and 90% of the clicks all happen on page 1. So if you're on page 2, it's just the same as not even existing. So how do we get to know what types of things that people are searching for, what types of terms people are searching for? Because they're not always what you would expect. What we recommend is talking with people who have direct customer-facing contact. And that means everyone from the person who answers the phone at the front of your office if you're a broker, the call center if you're a carrier or a wholesaler, and getting ideas from them of what types of questions people ask. Because we want to be in the business of they ask and we answer. Because if we're putting out relevant content that answers the questions, relevant content is the important part, because that's a big part of the algorithm that Google uses when they're giving a quality score, which is the way they rank you on an organic page. So we want to have a whole waterfall, an ever-flowing content waterfall of really good, really relevant content. So how do we distribute that content? Now getting into this idea of marketing automation. Well, if you look at the top row of those tools, those drivers of content marketing or inbound marketing success, those top tools are used really to help plan a differentiated content strategy and they're used to be able to optimize your site so that the content is found, which is really important. That even includes over on the far right-hand side, paid search sometimes. It's an important part of this. And in the second part of that row, that second row, those first three are really more distribution. Now, arguably, some of these can go back and forth, but looking at it from an idea of how do we get the information distributed. And then, of course, that last part, and one of the most important things overall, is this idea of continually optimizing. The exciting thing about content marketing, inbound marketing, all digital marketing is, unlike traditional media, where it's started and it's kind of set it and forget it, you're constantly tweaking, constantly optimizing, constantly looking at ways to measure and analyze and improve and do a better job of the content that's out there. That's really important for success overall in these types of campaigns and these types of arenas. So again, this idea of ever-flowing content, relevant content, but most importantly, and I think this is a key thing that many people in our industry, in the insurance industry, forget, and that is differentiated content. And differentiated is really, really important to think about. Well, if you've seen me speak before, you know I'm a big advocate of brand differentiation and differentiating your brand, because brands stand for something. Brands mean something, and your people deliver your brand. And as you look at that and you think about the way that that content is distributed, and you think about the promise, that term that we've used since we were in college, the brand promise, and you look at it across from brand performance. Well, another term has come up in recent years, and that's purpose. And people are looking more towards brands to really have a purpose, and that's certainly true in the insurance industry. Certainly wouldn't want to be in United Airlines' shoes these days with the idea. Matter of fact, I read a survey result this morning that before the most recent debacle for United Airlines, they were in last place of the mainstream airlines in terms of customer satisfaction, and I would hazard to say that they're probably a little bit lower than that now, if you can be lower than last. But as we look at this idea of promise and purpose in our brand world, and you think about those things, as they overlap, that's where your customer lives. That's where that brand perception lives. I look at it as an equation of promise plus purpose plus performance is really who your brand is. And that's super important as you're looking for differentiating your brand over the course of time. Because when you have a differentiated brand and your brand performs according to the truth that you're talking about, it really builds another really important T word, and that's trust. People become trustful of your brand, and that's very, very important. So we look at the sea of different carriers, and there's even more clutter when we get into brokers and other intermediaries in the very confusing distribution network. If you go out to hultmarketing.com/brand quiz, you'll find an interesting little 17-question brand insight snapshot. It takes you about 2.5 minutes to go through it. Thousands of people have done this, but it's an interesting insight for your company to see really what happens. And I've got just a couple of the highlights from cohorts of yours, colleagues in the Insurance Marketing Communications Association, a room full of them that took this survey 2 years ago at the National Conference in Nashville. And we're going to have this in a breakout session this year as well. But the amazing thing is when you look at this, and this is chief marketing officers, marketing directors, VPs of marketing who answered these questions about their own organization. And at the very top of that is our organization understands our brand distinction, and less than 50% of them strongly agree with that idea. And when you look at it from an employee standpoint, our employees are aware of our brand distinction. Again, it's less than 50% agree with that, strongly agree. So that's really difficult for employees to be able to deliver on distinction when they don't even know what it is. And our brand distinction is recognized by our customers, again, well under 50% agree or strongly agree with that statement. So it's really important as we think about that, because in this scenario, 61% of members rated themselves a C or a D. So this wasn't a consulting firm doing this. This was IMCA members rating their own brands, and they're saying of their own brands that they're not differentiated. So I bring that up because it's a really important thing to consider as we're looking at the content that we develop. The more specialized the content and the more specialized the market that we're after, the easier it is to become differentiated. Okay, so let me state that a little bit differently. So the top 3 audiences that people are looking to use content marketing, inbound marketing, digital marketing methodologies to address. And this was on the registration survey. So they're member targets, folks that are on this phone call. So they are all agent targets. So agents for commercial lines and personal lines, and recruiting new agents for personal lines. So that's the lion's share of it. Well, it's a lot easier to differentiate your brand amongst your own agents than it is to differentiate your brand across a whole world of consumers or commercial lines customers. So that's good to know, and it's a much more easily obtainable target to think about it from a standpoint of the independent agent and the broker and how we differentiate ourselves with them. Because ultimately, the independent agent is going to be putting out the product that they feel most strongly about, that's most well differentiated with them rather than other brands. So important to keep that in mind. I bring this back again. This was the survey that I showed at the beginning of this, because each of these areas are really important to think about as we go through this. And I want to really spend some time because so many people were interested in the optimizing portion of this and optimizing, improving ROI. So that starts with, in terms of most successful best practices that we have engaged with clients in, is building a bridge between sales and marketing. Getting everyone on the same page is really important. And I'm going to come around to full circle of how that works in terms of being able to differentiate and have a stronger ROI strategy. So part of what we use and what I would recommend you use is the idea of a buyer's journey. So whether that's a journey of ultimate customer, a policyholder, or a prospective policyholder, or it's your agent, they both have a journey that they go through as they're deciding on their purchasing pattern, their purchasing decision. And it's a rather serpentine path. And as you look at all of these different dots on here, representative of different touch points, if you will, throughout the spectrum, we have a lot of opportunities where consumers, and I'm using that term widely, so it is relevant to both customers, ultimate policyholders, as well as agents. And they go through this idea of awareness and consideration and purchase and retention and ultimately advocacy, where they're telling their friends and neighbors about it or their fellow brokers. And we've all been in meetings with brokers where they're really advocating for a particular carrier, and they're talking about the great experiences that they had with that carrier. And it could be relevant to a claim, it could be relevant to the ease of doing business with that carrier, it could be relevant to any one of a number of different things. The same, of course, is true of policyholders and potential policyholders. So important to look at these things, and we look at them as impact points. And they are different for every line of insurance. They're different for every type, personal lines versus commercial lines. They're different for every type of commercial lines. There's a far different path to purchase for professional liability insurance for architects or engineers or accountants than there is the path to purchase for an automobile policy or even a workers' comp policy within a business. So it's important to think about these things and look at them as we go through the planning for content. The other part of what's really important about this idea of building a tighter bridge between sales and marketing is the idea of what is a qualified lead. And the idea of a qualified lead is difficult for a lot of companies to be able to put their head around. And what we find is really important is that you need to be able to sit down with sales and let them define, and if I'm using sales in a broad way as, again, whether that sales is a broker or sales is your internal sales force who calls on your agent force, your independent agent force. We're looking for them to define what success looks like in terms of a sales qualified lead. The reason that that's so important is because for years there's been a divide between sales and marketing. We've all heard it before. Sales says marketing doesn't bring me any qualified leads. Marketing says you never follow up on any of my leads. Sales says you don't bring me any qualified leads, therefore I don't follow up on any of your leads. The wonderful thing about digital marketing is we can qualify those through a number of different methods. Most marketing automation platforms have lead scoring ability where you can rate different activities that happen on behalf of the people that are on your website, that are clicking on search ads, that are reading content on your blog, that are downloading thought leadership, that are downloading white papers and other pieces of content that you will be bringing out to them. And you can score them based on their level of engagement, and based on that level of engagement, when you work with the sales team, they are believers in marketing bringing them sales qualified leads. The most important part of that statement is, for many companies, this is the first time that marketing has actually been in a position to be able to prove revenue. That marketing actually has a direct correlation on revenue. Okay, so we started with the idea of working with the sales team. Now let's talk about the C-suite and the language of the C-suite. Quick little poll here. Should come up on your screen. Tell me from a standpoint of basically not who's a better friend, but when we're looking, the CEO is really in a bind. and revenue needs to happen, who does he talk to? Is he closer to the VP of sales or is he closer to the VP of marketing?
And we'll have those results momentarily.
Very good. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, well, we have a landslide pretty much. VP of sales, 83% of the respondents, and 17% indicated VP of marketing.
Okay, VP of sales. Pretty much as I would have guessed it, and certainly the way that I would have voted on that particular issue. Well, it makes sense because the revenue is generally there. So you look at the other members of the C-suite, the CFO. Well, the CFO's got a whole different set of areas that they're concerned with. Many of them the CEO, of course, is concerned with, but solvency is at the real base of that whole pyramid, and sustainability, meaning can we continue to do this time and time again. Predictability is right in the middle of it. So they are risk adverse. So as we build that pyramid, we look at that hierarchy of needs, if you will, of the CFO persona. Well, we've all been in the situation, or most of us have, where you get the email or the phone call or the tap on the back or the announcement in a meeting that, I'm sorry, but the marketing budget has been cut. It's a dark day, right, when that happens. Sometimes we lose people when that happens. Well, why does that happen? Well, in a traditional world, it's quite often because traditional marketing, which is unmeasurable and unpredictable, is really seen as the black hole that we throw money into, and we never really know if it's working. And so the CFO isn't really on board with the idea that we need to throw more money into this black hole. And what digital marketing and inbound marketing as a collective is able to do is it's able to create a predictable and measurable revenue stream. And it's able to create a measurable asset. And the CFO, when you look at that hierarchy of needs, remember predictability was high in there, sustainability is high, and they look at assets. They like assets. They like buildings. They like things that can appear on the balance sheet. And when we're building content, we're really building a lead generation factory, a factory that will continue to build long-term value, because content that is out in the on your owned properties and that is being found through searches is property that is continuing to produce predictable revenue over time. So if you look at this chart, we look at pay-per-click and the leads that you get through pay-per-click programs, and when you turn off the pay-per-click faucet, the leads really stop. When you look at inbound marketing leads, content leads, the cost starts higher for the idea of building the asset, but the cost is amortized over time. So the cost goes down, and the leads, the cost per lead actually becomes less over time. So it's really interesting to look at it from a standpoint of content continues to be an asset that is building over time and delivering over time. So the idea of proving ROI in a program, which is the number one concern and number one challenge that individuals indicated as they were registering. we put together this business development scenario, and it's different for every organization. We've never done two of these that are even close to the same. So mythical idea here, so you're a regional P&C carrier and your company wants to expand your market into commercial lines. And you have a great relationship with your independent agents, but they're not known to trust. They trust you for personal lines, but they don't know a lot about you for the commercial lines. So you need to build some credibility with agents over that time. Well, the place we recommend starting is with job number one being the ROI strategy. How are we going to monetize the results of what we do? So gonna dive into some kind of deep numbers here, but I need you to stay with me for just a couple of seconds. So I'm going to start here at the top. So you've got 1,000 agencies in this mythical model. You've currently got 3,000 agents represented at those agencies. So you got a lot of small agencies that we're talking about. The production of all the carriers, and remember, your average broker handles 20 to 25 different carriers. They have a lot of different relationships, but they only have a few that are really their primary carriers. So if you look at the total commercial line production of all of the agencies for all of their carriers, we're talking $1.5 billion that is being represented by those 1,000 agencies. So what percentage of that fits your appetite? Your particular one in this model, we're saying 35% of that meets our appetite. Okay, so that's a little bit over $500 million. And right now, the commercial line production is at $26 million. So the availability that's out there that fits our appetite is quite a bit, 498. Okay, so a big number. If we look at what the average commercial line production is per agency and per individual agent, because we want to get all the way down to a beating heart, because these are people that we have their names, we have their email addresses, we have the ability to talk with them, and for many of us, we also have representatives of our firm that are out there meeting with them on a regular basis. And we start to build some success scenarios, starting with very small success and then working up the line to see what it looks like as we get into larger success. Because we need to have some place to start. So if we went with our 1% increase conversion based on our activities, we're getting a $4 million, almost $5 million bump in sales. Okay, so that's our revenue on there. And you just follow this down. Now the important part of this is to remember that the sale isn't a one-time sale. In this particular carrier situation, you have to put your own numbers in here, but their average commercial line customer stays with them for 5 years. So really that commercial lines customer that's at $4,500 is really a $22,000 lifetime value. So if you look at that, the lifetime value of the first year acquisition is really a $24 million lifetime value based on that year one sale at 1% conversion of the overall number. So the numbers really become pretty startling over a period of time. Let's hold that up there for a second so you can take a look at this. And I understand this is kind of deep math and it's going to be different for your particular situation. By all means, I'll have my email address up at the end. Please feel free to call me if you want to talk about how it fits exactly into your situation, because it's, as I said, it's a little bit different for every organization, every sales scenario, every product line endeavor. Okay, so what does that look like as we pull these numbers into the next thing? So let's say we're starting out with an inbound marketing program, and we're going to put some round numbers in here that the setup of the program is going to cost $75,000 to get that ready to go. Now, those numbers need to be calculated, whether they're internal costs, so you're having to hire people to do that, or you're moving people from existing work that they're doing to the inbound marketing program. But you need to be able to calculate your internal costs and your external costs. We're saying $250,000 is the overall cost for the inbound program. That's the amount of money that's used for developing the strategy, developing content, loading content into the marketing automation system, and all of those things associated with running the program, including the analytics and the optimizing and so forth. The website, we didn't put a number on here, but we believe it's very important to do that. It's really important to take a look and say, realistically, what is that costing to optimize the website for the use of this program? And then the marketing automation software, there are a number of different systems out there, and I'll have some of those up at the end so that if you're not familiar with them. But we put an annual value of $10,000 on there. So coming up with a total cost of $335,000. So in this model, we're going to take a look at the lifetime value of the customer against the customer acquisition cost. All right, so let's start to fill some numbers in here. And we can do this a couple of different ways. You can do it on a gross profit or on a gross revenue model. And it really depends. Some carriers like to use a gross revenue model, particularly if it's personal lines, because quite often the loss ratios aren't overly favorable, and they're looking at it from a cash flow standpoint. So in this scenario, we take our lifetime value of the customer that we calculated earlier, that we saw was the 4,500 times 5 years, is $22,500, and our number of customers that we are targeting, again in our calculation earlier. So we have, against our $335,000 in marketing expense, we have a customer acquisition cost of $302 against the lifetime value of $22,500, or a 74-to-1 return on investment. Now that's a pretty exciting thing, or it's 26-to-1 if you look at it, if you had a 35% gross profit percentage, so if you apply it that way. And most CFOs get pretty excited when you start talking about building a lead generation factory that is able to produce 26-to-1 return on investment. So this factory that we're building, this lead generation factory, you put $1 in at one end and $26 comes out at the other end, and a whole lot of CFOs get pretty excited about that. All right, now I talked quite a bit earlier about the importance of content and creating the right type of content for the audience. So in this particular situation, what we always do is we create buyers' personas. So this is agents. So we got the owner agent, the non-owner producer, and the CSR or account manager. And we're really looking at the characteristics of the way that they think. And we all know that the owner has a whole bunch of different needs from carriers than the customer service rep has, for example. And non-owner producers have a different set of concerns than the owner producers have. And it's important to be able to identify those and to be able to speak to each of those personas in the content that you produce. And it's a matter quite often of just barely tweaking the content, but it's important to be able to do that because it really speaks directly to the individual person who's the beating heart that's on the other end of the buying scenario, because we're talking about specifically what they are interested in. I don't know if everyone else heard that, but for some reason music just started on my end. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm assuming that someone there at IMCA headquarters is going to take care of this music that's taking place in the background. And anyone help me on that? Ah, very good. Looks like it's coming back again. Anyway, so as we're looking at this, and we're looking at the common questions that are asked, and we look at this sales funnel, if you will, at the top, people are finding us for our content. They're finding us for content that could be on our blog or other places on our website. And as they work down through the funnel, they're getting more thought leadership from us that is very relevant to the problems that they're trying to solve. And we're nurturing them with automated content that comes to them over time. It sounds like we found the culprit of the music. Glad to see that. So the sales funnel, really important as you're planning content. On the left-hand side, you look at where the lead is working down through this funnel. On the right-hand side, you look at the type of content that you would be offering as they go through the sales funnel. And again, this waterfall comes out. So for every piece of content that you create, one piece of what we call primary content, a big content asset, we can fall out of that all sorts of smaller pieces of content. So a white paper produces a number of podcasts and blog posts and so forth. So I want to show you a piece of thought leadership content that was produced by US Assure. They are a builder's risk provider. They're actually a program manager for Zurich for everything 75 million and under, construction value of 75 million and under. And if you look at the way that this program works, that call to action is on the homepage of their site and several other places throughout their site. It drives you to a landing page, which notice it looks like the website, but there's no nav on that landing page. And it has one goal: to get your information over here. So it's delivering a little bit of value. It's telling you about this. It's getting you to fill in a form that gives you the lead information, and then we're able to use that lead and deliver the content that they have asked for, and they can download that content. And as they come back in the marketing automation system and they submit the form, then the download page comes, the thank you page, and the nav comes back so that they can navigate back to the site. So for the landing page, the most important part is that we're not just landing them on the website, we're landing them on a page that is very, very specific to what we want them to do, and that is generate a lead. Now, if this is someone who's already in your system, for example, you're doing a program to agents, those agents that are already in your system, their information is going to come up pre-populated so that they don't have to put that information in there. Showing you just a step further for this same carrier, the same company, US Assure, if you clicked on one of their paid ads, it brings you into inside their site. It lands you inside the site, which isn't ideal because we don't have a way of capturing a lead there and giving them that value-added content that they asked for in the paid ad. Now it could be done that way. They've just chosen not to do it that way, but it's a very fine program, and I imagine they'll probably optimize that to add landing pages to that particular portion of the site. Likewise, when you clicked into the organic results, it came to the blog content, and as you click into the blog content, again, there's a call to action on there that gives you the ability to download, again, that piece of thought leadership that we looked at earlier with our example. So that's down there in the right-hand corner, the 9 factors for success. So blogging, companies that double their monthly blog posts from 3 to 5 times a month to 6 to 8 times a month, so basically twice a week, double the amount of leads that they actually are able to produce over time. So that's a pretty exciting number just from creating more blog content. If you look at email marketing, not real sexy to most of us, but year over year, time and time again, it is considered the most relevant, highest ROI for business-to-business endeavors. In this case, reporting in the most recent survey, $40 for every dollar spent. So it's not sexy, but it's really, really valuable. Here's an example of the way US Assure distributes information about their thought leadership. And then after someone downloads a piece of thought leadership, then it continues to offer automated nurture assets that come to them. So it's a matter of, once the program is set up, it just automatically nurtures that lead. And that's really important. When you look at the center number, 50% of leads that are qualified are not ready to purchase immediately. And if you look at the last number on there, the leads that are nurtured with additional content are 20% more likely to increase in sales. So it's really important to be able to look at that nurtured type of content. Okay, so if you go through this website diagnostic, and as US Assure did, they hit all of these criteria with their website. So they did a fine job of making sure that these things they were able to achieve on their website, and therefore optimize it so that it converts really well in the inbound marketing world. So as we get wrapping up here, people are always talking about how could we possibly produce that much content. There is so many things that we could talk about. What's really most important? Well, we have what we call the big 6, and these aren't in any particular area of importance, but these 6 topics we find produce the most content, relevant content, clicked on content, time and time again. And cost and price, and you may look at it and say, well, we can't talk about price. We don't know what a price is going to be. Well, you can't specifically quote a price in a blog post, but you can certainly talk about the things. If you're a professional liability insurance, you can certainly talk about the things that add to the price tag of that type of insurance. So really important to look at the big 6. When we see people that really succeed in this inbound marketing world, this new content marketing world, these 4 things come up time and time again. They've got the entire organization involved in the success of the content marketing. They've got a solid plan that they start out with, but they're really flexible and they continue to evolve it. Remember, it's the idea of 8 to 12-week sprints. They're campaigns that continue to evolve and change, and they stay committed because it's a long-term endeavor. It's a matter of continuing to do this time and time again. And they also take a look at it from an idea of team member turnover, because that can be a real tough thing for an organization. I mentioned before a number of different platforms. These are some of them. We have worked with, on some level, we've really worked with all of these, some more in depth than others. We find HubSpot to be the most user-friendly, easiest to optimize, and easiest to get started most quickly. Okay, before we wrap up, I know you've got some questions. Mark has indicated a couple of helpful resources. If you go to websitegrader.com, you can put your own website in there, and they will email you a report. It's a really worthwhile tool to take a look at. The brand insight snapshot that we talked about earlier is good to take a look at. And if you when you registered, if you offered to be able to have me send you information, when this book comes out this summer, it's an ebook on the 10 best practices for success in the insurance industry and inbound marketing. I will send that out to you. If you did not, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and I will be happy to do that. Likewise, any of the content that is on here, by all means, please reach out to me if I can be of any help whatsoever. And Mark, please take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, we have several questions. I know we're kind of short on time, so we'll try to get a few of these in, but some great questions have come from the audience. The first one is, you said that standalone email marketing is more effective when used with lead nurturing. Can you describe what the difference is?
Sure. Basically, we're looking at a one-time email blast that you could do through MailChimp or any number of other programs, versus a nurturing program where if they asked for, they downloaded a piece of thought leadership. Let's just use the professional liability insurance idea as the concept. So they downloaded a white paper on that, and then you continue to nurture them with more content. So checklists, maybe on risk mitigation in the insurance sector or the engineering sector, as an example. So it's an automated lead nurturing program. Increases success by 20%.
Okay, let's see, our next question. How can we, the audience I guess in general, identify sales-ready leads? How can our marketers and our members identify sales-ready leads?
It's going to be different, of course, for every organization, every sales organization, and we recommend meeting with your internal salespeople as well as your carriers, and depending upon who it is that we're targeting, whether it's consumers or business-to-business customers or actually agents. We need to look at the triggers and agree with our salespeople or our brokers who are ultimately going to nurture those leads on what makes for a sales-ready lead versus a marketing-ready lead, or a lead that we would nurture with more content.
Good. Next question that's come in. I did not get the idea of rent versus own when looking at inbound leads versus pay-per-click leads. Could you please explain this further?
Yeah. Okay. So rent versus own. So if you look at the idea of when you quit paying the rent for your pay-per-click program, the leads stop. Okay. So the faucet is turned off. So that's the idea of renting. When you create content and you put the content on your website, on your social channels, on your blog, that content continues to build traffic to your website after the pay-per-click program stops. So you see some companies, they by the 20th of the month, they've shot their entire budget for the month, and so you're no longer getting pay-per-click leads. If you have a well-optimized inbound marketing program, you've built content that you own, and that content continues to produce leads when pay-per-click isn't working, because you're not continuing to pay for it. You've already paid for those leads.
Good. Let's try to get one or two more questions in here, Jim. Next one is, we have a lot of products and struggle with proving our ROI for what we do. How can what you have presented here in today's webcast help with that? How can we do better job improving our ROI?
Well, as I went through that scenario, and again, I apologize, it was kind of a deep dive and I went through it rather quickly. It's different for every organization, but we have to start with the basic premise of what are we trying to get done? Who are we trying to nurture? What do we want them to do? And then build a model around that. So is it agents that we're communicating with? And what is it that we want them to do? Is it a narrow product line, which is generally the best place to start because you can develop thought leadership on a narrow product line? Let's just say, well, builder's risk insurance. That's probably a good example. You can build thought leadership that will get you good organic returns, and many brokers have done that. You know, in that particular scenario. But then projecting the amount of traffic that you're going to build and the amount of traffic that you're going to convert from visitors to leads and leads to customers is ultimately what has to happen. The first time that you do it, it's an awkward process. You're generally not dead on. It's somewhat of an educated guesstimate, but over time, we found that people get better and better at being able to forecast what those conversion rates are going to be.
Good, Jim. Let's see if we get one more quick one in before we have to wrap. We do pay-per-click to drive traffic to our organization's website, but we're not getting the leads that we really need. What can we do to change that paradigm? Well,
the very first thing is what I see in a lot of insurance industry sites, and certainly across the industry, across all industries, but it's very common with broker sites and with carrier sites. They don't use landing pages, and the simplest, most cost-effective, best ROI tool in the entire digital arsenal is a landing page, because if you're sending your pay-per-click leads just to your home page, which is the cardinal sin, or to even an internal landing page inside your website, there's too many leaks there. There's too many places for them to get lost. Most of us are ADD when we're on a website, and we click away from what we're trying to get them to do. So a landing page is designed specifically to convert people from visitors to leads and leads to customers.
Great, Jim. Well, we're going to have to wrap up now, but I'd like to thank you for your very insightful presentation today, and thanks to our audience for participating and submitting such a wide array of excellent questions. Also want to remind our audience to please keep a lookout in your inbox for our post-webcast survey. All who participate in the survey process will be eligible for the drawing of a $25 Amazon gift card, courtesy of my organization, the Main Street America Group. I also want to quickly highlight some upcoming IMCA key dates and deadlines. Friday, May 5th, a week from Friday, is the deadline for our Innovation Torchbearer Award nominations. This is a fabulous and very prestigious award in the insurance industry. All the information is available on our website, imcanet.com, but it's a great program, and we're looking for some excellent nominations this year. Some other key dates regarding our annual conference. The room block at our hotel, the McCormick Ranch in Scottsdale, is Friday, June 2nd for our special room block with a very special discounted rate, so please keep aware of that if you're attending the conference. The pre-registration, you must register by June 13th in order to attend this year's conference. And then, of course, the dates of the conference coming up in June 25th through 27th, of which Jim Flynn will be one of our featured presenters, both general session and breakout presentations from Jim, so a lot more to come from Mr. Flynn. But thanks again for attending today's program. With the conference coming up, we'll be taking a break on our webcast for the next few months, but stay tuned for more information about our continuing series of leadership webcast programs. And thanks again for attending today, and have a wonderful day. Take care.